Sarah Mitchell stood on the porch of the small house in Cedar Falls, Iowa, watching the autumn leaves dance along the empty street. Lily slept in the stroller beside her, pink lips slightly parted, blissfully unaware of the storm consuming her mother. 8 months. 8 months since that child came into the world with blue eyes identical to her father's. And 8 months since Sarah made the hardest decision of her life, not to tell. James's last letter was folded inside her coat pocket. She touched the crumpled paper compulsively, like a talisman against her guilt. 3 more weeks, love. Just 3 more weeks and I'll be home. 3 weeks. The amount of time left before the secret would blow up in her face. It all began the previous December, on a freezing morning when the world was still asleep. Sarah had been alone in the bathroom, trembling, not from cold, but from pure fear. The pregnancy test showed 2 bright, undeniable lines. James had been deployed in the desert for 2 months, somewhere she couldn't even pronounce properly. She picked up the phone 3 times that morning. 3 times she almost called the military base. 3 times she changed her mind. How do you tell a man who faces death every day that life is growing inside you? How do you add more weight to the shoulders of someone already carrying the world? Sarah remembered his voice on their last video call. So tired, so distant. His eyes had that shadow she had learned to recognize. Fear disguised as courage. So she decided to wait. But waiting turned into hiding. And hiding turned into a hole that grew in her chest day after day. Her pregnancy was lonely. She went to appointments alone, held the ultrasound photos against her chest in the car, and cried silently. She invented excuses during video calls, angles that hid her belly, loose clothes, short conversations. Everything's fine here, love. Just tell me about you. James never suspected, or maybe he didn't want to. When Lily was born on a March morning, with snow falling outside the hospital window, Sarah held that warm little body and cried until she had no tears left. The nurse asked if she wanted to call someone. Sarah shook her head. There was only one person in the world she wanted there, and he was 7,000 miles away, not knowing he had just become a father. Now, standing on the porch as the November sun painted the sky orange, Sarah felt the weight of every lie by omission, every photo she didn't send, every milestone James had missed, the first smile, the first tooth, the tiny hands learning to grasp things. She looked at her daughter sleeping peacefully. Lily had a tuft of dark hair just like her father's, the same little dimple on the chin. It was impossible to hide who she was. She was James in miniature. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. Sarah almost dropped it when she saw the name on the screen. James. Cell. He never called from his cell. It was always from the base, at scheduled times. Hello? Her voice came out sharper than usual. Sarah. His voice sounded different, closer, too real. Love, I managed to get an earlier flight. I'm coming home today. The world tilted. Sarah clutched the porch railing. Today? We land in Des Moines in 4 hours. He laughed, a sound she hadn't heard in so long. I couldn't wait 3 more weeks. I needed you. Lily chose that exact moment to wake up and cry. There was silence on the other end. Long, heavy. Sarah. James's voice was careful now, weighing each word. Is there a baby there? Sarah closed her eyes. The tears came hot, betraying everything she had held back. James. She could barely breathe. I need to tell you something. The Des Moines airport was crowded, but Sarah saw only one door. The door James would walk through at any moment. Lily was in her car seat, dressed in a yellow onesie Sarah had bought specifically for this day. A day she had imagined 1,000 times. But never like this. Never with this much fear. The coal had dropped before she could explain. Maybe his phone credit ran out, or maybe the universe was being merciful and giving her one last chance to do this face to face. During the 4 hours of waiting, Sarah ran through every possible way to tell him. None felt right. None erased 8 months of silence. People began to exit. Sarah stood, instinctively smoothing her hair, adjusting her blouse. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone around her could hear it. And then she saw him. James Mitchell walked through that door like a ghost turning into flesh. He was thinner, his beard longer than she remembered, his olive green uniform carrying dust that looked like it belonged to another planet. But his eyes, God, those eyes, were exactly as she remembered. Deep brown, capable of seeing straight through her. He saw her at the same moment, and he froze. His gaze dropped instantly to the car seat at her feet. To Lily, who was looking around curiously, her pacifier moving gently with every breath. For 5 whole seconds, no one moved. The airport continued buzzing around them, people hugging, crying, laughing. But in the small circle where Sarah and James existed, there was only silence. James took a step forward, then another. Each movement looked painful, like he was wading through water. When he was close enough, he stopped. He just stared, first at Lily, then at Sarah, then back at Lily. She? His voice was rough, strangled. Is she? Sarah nodded. Tears were already streaming down her face. James dropped his backpack to the floor with a heavy thud that made a few people turn their heads. He didn't notice. He had fallen to his knees right there in the middle of the Des Moines airport, his hands trembling as he reached for the car seat. Can I? He looked at Sarah, asking for permission. She nodded again, unable to form words. James unfastened the straps with clumsy fingers and lifted Lily as if he were holding crystal. The baby looked at him with those huge blue eyes, his blue eyes, and something cracked across James's face, an expression Sarah had never seen before. Pain and love and awe, all mixed into one. Hi, he whispered to his daughter. Hi, little one. Lily didn't cry. She just watched him, her tiny hand opening and closing in the air. James brought that hand to his face, letting her small fingers touch his beard. A tear fell onto her yellow onesie. Sarah knelt beside them, her hand finding his shoulder. He was trembling. I'm so sorry, she began. But he shook his head. How many months? 8. She was born in March. James closed his eyes, doing the math. When he opened them again, there was understanding there, and hurt, and love, all at once. You were pregnant when I left. It wasn't a question. I found out 2 weeks after you deployed. Why? His voice failed. He tried again. Why didn't you tell me? Sarah took a deep breath, trying to find the words she had rehearsed hundreds of times. Because you were already carrying too much. Because I didn't want you distracted and... Her voice cracked. And not come home. I didn't want to give you one more reason to worry when you needed to focus on staying alive. James looked at her for a long moment. Lily started making little noises, and he instinctively rocked her, the movement surprisingly natural. You took 8 months from me, he said, and the pain in those words was real. 8 months of her life. The birth, the first smiles, everything. I know. Sarah was crying openly now. I know, and I'm sorry. I took pictures of everything. Videos. I saved it all for you. But I know it's not the same. I know I can't give that time back. What's her name? Lily. Lily Rose Mitchell. Something flickered across his face. A ghost of a smile. Like my grandmother. I remembered you always talked about her. They stayed there, kneeling on the airport floor, with Lily between them. People walked past, some glancing curiously, but none of that mattered. It was just the 3 of them, trying to figure out how to become a family. I don't know if I can forgive you right now, James said, and the honesty of it hurt more than any shout. But, he looked at Lily and his whole face transformed. But I want to know my daughter. God, Sarah, I want to be here. She nodded, wiping her face with the back of her hand. That's all I want too. The house in Cedar Falls had never felt so small. James stood in the middle of the living room, looking around as if he were in unfamiliar territory. There were new things. A colorful alphabet rug, a baby rocker beside the couch, a stack of diapers on the coffee table. Evidence of a life that had unfolded without him. Sarah laid Lily on the rug with a few toys and turned to James. He was still wearing his uniform, still carried the smell of a long journey, but his eyes never left the baby. You must be tired, Sarah said, breaking the uncomfortable silence. Do you want to take a shower? I can make some coffee or... I want to see, James interrupted. When she looked at him, confused, he clarified. You said you photographed everything. I want to see. Sarah felt her chest tighten. She nodded and went to the bedroom, returning with a shoebox full of printed photos and a tablet. James sat on the floor, close to Lily, but not too close, still unsure. Sarah sat beside him and started going through the photos. The first was the 12-week ultrasound, a tiny shape, almost abstract. That was the day I found out she was a girl, Sarah whispered. I went alone. The tech asked if I wanted to call the father. I lied and said you were working. James picked up the photo gently, running his thumb over the grainy image. The next showed Sarah with a small, visible bump, smiling at the camera in front of the mirror. 5 months. Your mom took that one. She knew, James. Your whole family knew. I asked them not to tell you. Asked them to let me handle this my way. My mom knew? His voice held a mixture of betrayal and relief. She was furious with me. Said you deserved to know. But she respected my decision. More photos. Sarah at the hospital, holding a pink bundle. Lily in the nursery, tiny under blue lights. The first day home. The first bath. James absorbed each image as if he were trying to live those moments retroactively. She was born at 3:47 a.m. Sarah narrated as he looked at a photo of newborn Lily in her arms. Weighed 7 pounds and 7 ounces. She cried the second the doctor picked her up, but stopped the moment I held her. You were alone, James said. Not as a question, but a heavy truth. Your mom got there an hour later. But yes, in that moment, I was alone. James closed his eyes, taking a long breath. When he opened them, something softer was there. I hate that you went through that by yourself. I hate that you made that decision for me, but... He looked at Lily, who had just discovered her own feet and was staring at them, fascinated. But I understand why you did. Sarah stared at him, surprised. You do? I don't know if I'd do anything different in your place. When you're there, in that heat, in that chaos, any distraction can get you killed. Any thought about home can be the 1 second you don't pay attention. If I had known about Lily, I would have come back different. I would have begged for medical leave, risked a court-martial. I would have gotten distracted. And you're right. Maybe I wouldn't have come back. It was Sarah's turn to close her eyes. Hearing that was painful and freeing at the same time. But you took that choice from me, James continued, his voice firm but not cruel. And that's going to take time to heal. I know. Lily started fussing and Sarah instinctively stood to pick her up. But James was faster. Can I? He asked again, still asking for permission. James, she's your daughter. You don't have to ask. He lifted Lily awkwardly but carefully. The baby studied him with those blue eyes, then smiled. A toothless, radiant smile that lit up her entire face. James melted. Sarah saw it. She saw the exact moment her husband fell in love with their daughter. Hi, Lily, he whispered, voice trembling. I'm your dad. I know I owe you about 8 months of bedtime stories, but we'll find a way to make that up, okay? Sarah had to turn away, wiping tears that wouldn't stop falling. They spent the rest of the afternoon like that. James on the floor with Lily, learning how to change diapers, badly. How to make her laugh, easier than he expected. How to simply exist near her. Sarah showed him videos. Lily rolling over for the first time, Lily babbling almost words, Lily laughing at the neighbor's dog. When night fell and Lily finally slept in her crib, exhausted from so much emotion, James and Sarah stood facing each other in the hallway. I don't know where we stand now, Sarah whispered. I don't know if you hate me. I don't know if you can look at me the same way. James stayed silent for a long moment. Then he stepped forward and pulled her into an embrace. It wasn't like the hugs from before. There wasn't that ease, that certainty, but there was something more honest, more fragile, more real. I don't hate you, he said against her hair. I'm angry. I'm hurt. But Sarah, he pulled back to look her in the eyes. When I was over there, the only thing that kept me alive was the thought of coming back to you. And now I'm here, and there's an entire life I didn't know about waiting for me. I don't know how to process that. I don't know how to feel everything I'm feeling. I have 8 months of apologies to give you, and I have 8 months of lost time to make up with my daughter. He brushed a hand gently across her cheek. So here's what we'll do. I'm staying. We'll try. We'll work through this. But Sarah, don't hide anything from me again. Ever. Promise? I promise. They stood in the dim hallway, listening to Lily's soft breathing through the baby monitor. It wasn't a happy ending. Not yet. But it was a beginning. An honest, painful, real beginning. And sometimes, Sarah thought, that was exactly what love needed in order to become something stronger. 3 weeks later, the house had found a new rhythm. Awkward, hesitant, but real. James woke up at 5 every morning, just like he had every day in the military. But now he found Lily awake too, drooling in her crib and smiling the moment she saw him. Sarah often woke to the sound of the two of them in the next room. James singing military cadences turned into lullabies, his deep voice making cadence sound surprisingly gentle. But not everything was smooth. Some nights, James woke up drenched in sweat, eyes wide and distant, and Sarah didn't know whether she should touch him or give him space. There were moments when she automatically picked Lily up, and she'd see the flash of hurt on James's face, an ever-present reminder that she had 8 months of practice he would never have. One December afternoon, Sarah found James in the attic, surrounded by old boxes. She climbed the creaking ladder, Lily resting on her hip. "What are you looking for?" James turned around, holding a dusty box. "Remember when we used to talk about having kids, before I enlisted?" Sarah nodded, her chest tightening with the memory. They were younger then, full of plans that felt simple. "I had saved some things from my childhood." He opened the box and pulled out a faded teddy bear. "I wanted our kid to have it. I wanted—" His voice faltered. "I forgot I kept this here." Sarah sat on the floor beside him, letting Lily explore the teddy bear with curious hands. "You dreamed about this," she said softly. "About having a family, and I stole the first months of that from you." "Yeah, you did." James didn't try to soften it, and Sarah appreciated the honesty. "But I made choices too, Sarah. I chose to enlist. I chose to leave. You stayed here, alone, pregnant, terrified I wouldn't come back. And I had no idea. I didn't see how hard it was on you." "That doesn't justify." "It doesn't," he agreed. "But it explains. And maybe explaining is enough to start forgiving." They climbed down from the attic together, James carrying the box of memories, Sarah carrying Lily. In the living room, he spread everything out on the floor. Old childhood photos, an autographed baseball, an album with movie ticket stubs from films he watched with his father before he died. "I want to tell her everything," James said, picking up a photo of himself at 5 years old, his gap-toothed smile identical to Lily's. "I want her to know where she came from, the grandfather she'll never meet, Grandma Rose, who gave her her name." Sarah sat on the floor with them, and for hours James told the story of his life. He talked about the father who died when he was 12, the mother who worked 2 jobs to keep him in school, the day he enlisted because he didn't know what else to do with all the anger he felt at the world. Lily didn't understand the words, of course, but she seemed to feel the weight of the moment. She stayed quiet, serious, her big eyes locked on her father. "You know what's strange?" James said at one point, his voice barely above a whisper. "Over there, I'd see guys getting news from home, babies being born, weddings, graduations, and I always felt jealous. I wanted something like that waiting for me. And the whole time," he looked at Lily, "the whole time I had it. I just didn't know. I stole that from you," Sarah said, the tears returning. They came easily lately. "I stole the waiting, the nerves, the anticipation, the hospital room, the first time holding her, the impossible first days where you don't sleep and don't know what you're doing. Yes, you stole that." James didn't look away. "And I'm going to have to live with that. We are going to have to live with that." "But Sarah?" He took her hand. "I don't want this to break us. I've seen too much breaking, too many things that couldn't be fixed. And when I look at you, at Lily, I know we're still fixable. But how? How do we fix something like this? One day at a time." He squeezed her hand. "You show me everything I missed. I try not to drown in the anger. We both learn to trust again. And Lily," he touched his daughter's face, "Lily gives us a reason to try." That night, when Lily finally fell asleep after a long battle with exhaustion, James and Sarah sat on the porch. The Iowa winter was cruel, but they wrapped themselves in blankets and shared a silence that was almost comfortable. I scheduled an appointment with a therapist, James said suddenly, for PTSD and to work through all of this. Sarah looked at him, surprised. Really? I can't be a good father if every loud noise makes me snap. And I can't be a good husband if I throw what you did in your face every time I get angry. He looked straight at her. I want this to work, Sarah. Really. But I need help. I'll go too, she said immediately. To therapy. If you're going, I'm going. He nodded, something close to a smile touching his lips for the first time in weeks. Together then. Together. It wasn't full forgiveness. It wasn't forgetting. But it was movement. Forward. Together. And for the first time since James returned, Sarah felt something like hope. 6 months later, spring arrived in Cedar Falls carrying promises the winter had frozen. The trees along the street bloomed in shades of pink and white, and Lily, now 1 year and 2 months old, took her first wobbly steps across the front lawn, her giggles echoing through the quiet neighborhood. James was kneeling on the ground, arms open, encouraging her. Come on, Lily. You can do it. Just 2 more steps. The toddler stared at him with fierce concentration, her little legs trembling, her tiny arms stretched out for balance. 1 step, 2, 3, and then she plopped down, laughing at her own effort. Almost. James scooped her up and tossed her gently in the air. You almost made it. Sarah watched from the porch, wiping her hands on her apron, her heart so full it seemed impossible it could still fit inside her chest. 6 months of therapy, individual and couples. 6 months of hard conversations, of nights when they had to consciously choose not to give up, of small victories and inevitable setbacks. 6 months of rebuilding. It wasn't easy. There was the session where James finally screamed everything he'd been holding back. The anger, the betrayal, the feeling of being robbed of something sacred. There was the night Sarah confessed that she'd been so terrified of losing him that she thought lies were safer than truths. There were tears, many tears, and there were moments when giving up seemed easier than continuing to hurt. But they didn't give up. James had found work at a local auto shop using the skills he learned in the military repairing vehicles. Every day at exactly 6 p.m., he walked through the front door, and every time Lily, now fully walking, ran, tripping over her own feet, straight into his arms. It was Sarah's favorite moment, watching James's entire face light up when he saw his daughter. Sarah had gone back to working part-time at the library, and James's mother helped take care of Lily in the afternoons. The relationship between Sarah and her mother-in-law had been tense at first. You should have told him, Dorothy Mitchell said more than once. But over time, seeing the effort Sarah and James put in, Dorothy softened. You're trying, she told Sarah one afternoon, squeezing her hand. That's all that matters now. You're truly trying. That spring afternoon, when Lily finally managed to cross the entire lawn without falling, the 3 of them celebrated as if she'd climbed Everest. James lifted her onto his shoulders. Sarah took pictures, and they walked to the ice cream shop on the corner, a tradition forming quietly, naturally. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Sarah found James on the porch where so many hard conversations had taken place. Can I show you something? She asked. He nodded, and she disappeared into the house, returning with a large envelope. What's this? Open it. James opened it carefully and pulled out a series of high-quality printed photos. The first showed him, Sarah, and Lily at the park the week before. The second was him teaching Lily how to hold a toy screwdriver. The third was the 3 of them on the couch, Lily asleep between them as they watched TV. I thought, Sarah began, her voice soft. I took the first 8 months from you. I can't give those back, but I can make sure you have every moment from now on. So I started taking pictures. Of everything. I don't want you to miss anything else. James looked at the photos, a single silent tear sliding down his cheek. Sarah, I still feel sorry, she said. Every day I feel sorry. But I've learned I can't live in the past. All I can do is make the present and the future better. He pulled her into a hug, and this time it was like the old hugs, full of certainty, of shared understanding, of love that had been tested and survived. I forgave you, James whispered into her hair. I hadn't told you yet, but I forgave you. Sarah pulled back to look at him, eyes shining. When? Last week, in therapy. I realized holding on to anger was costing me more than what you did. That I had a choice. I could stay trapped in what I lost, or I could show up for what I have now. He cupped her face gently. And I have a lot. I have you. I have Lily. I have a second chance that so many of the guys I served with will never get. I don't deserve you. Probably not. He smiled. Really smiled. But you're stuck with me anyway. They laughed, and it felt good. Light. Real. Weeks later, on a sunny Sunday, James's family gathered at the park for Lily's first birthday party. It wasn't her actual first birthday. That one had passed while James was still processing everything. But it was the first they celebrated together as a complete family. There was cake, balloons, grandparents doting on their granddaughter, uncles making silly faces. Lily wore a crooked birthday tiara and had pink frosting on her nose. And when it was time to sing Happy Birthday, James held Sarah on one side and Lily on the other, singing louder than everyone else. Sarah looked around, at the family, the blooming trees, the impossibly blue sky. She looked at her husband, who had come back from war to find a life he never expected, at the daughter who had been born in secrecy, but was now being raised in truth. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard days. There were still conversations they needed to have, but it was real. It was honest. It was theirs. That night, when everything was quiet and Lily slept, exhausted from being adored all day, James picked up the journal Sarah had kept during her pregnancy, the pages where she wrote to him, even though she couldn't send the words. "Did you finish reading it?" she asked. "I did." He closed the notebook gently. "It was hard, reading about you going through everything alone. But it was beautiful too, seeing how much you loved her, how much you loved me even when I wasn't here. I've always loved you, James, even when I made the wrong choice. It wasn't entirely wrong." He pulled her closer. "It was complicated. It was human. And I've learned that sometimes love isn't about doing the right thing. It's about doing what you think will protect the people you love, even if it hurts." They fell quiet, listening to Lily breathing through the baby monitor. "Do you think she'll understand?" Sarah asked. "When she's older. When we tell her how she was born. I think she'll understand she had parents who made mistakes but never stopped trying," James said, kissing her forehead. "And I think that's a better lesson than any perfection we could pretend to have." Sarah nodded, sinking into his embrace. Outside, spring kept turning Cedar Falls into something new. And inside that small house, a family once broken and rebuilt slept peacefully. Not perfect, not without scars, but deeply, undeniably complete. Because sometimes love isn't about never hurting each other. Sometimes it's about choosing to heal together. And sometimes, Sarah thought as she drifted to sleep in her husband's arms, with their daughter breathing softly in the next room, the happiest ending isn't the one where nothing goes wrong. It's the one where everything goes wrong and you choose to fix it anyway.